Time once again to check in on news from around the world and outside of the world. And meanwhile, way out in deep space, turns out we might have a black hole close to our solar system. I'm gonna give you my non-scientific, super brief version of what is believed to have happened. So you have all of these trans-Neptunian objects way far out, super far out, and scientists have been analyzing them and trying to figure out why they move the way that they do. And it turned out that something needs to be there to influence their paths. Now, one idea is that there is this massive additional planet, 5 to 15 times the size of Earth, that's manipulating them. But some scientists say that that's not actually what it is. It's not a big planet, it's a very small black hole. And if true, the proposed black hole likewise would be located hundreds of times farther from the sun than Earth. But because black holes are incredibly adept at crushing down matter, a black hole equivalent to roughly 5 Earth masses would be only about the size of a baseball. So depending, we've either got a baseball or softball sized literal black hole, like far, but not that far, not as far as you would want for something that generally when we see it in movies is the most horrendous thing literally imaginable to humans. We've got a little message I want to give you from an astronomer who says this: the important thing to understand here is that all that the calculations can tell us about these objects way far out is the mass of planet 9, not its composition. So in principle, it could be a planet, a potato, a black hole, a hamburger. This person was very hungry while giving this quote, as long as its orbital parameters are right. So I have a lot of thoughts about this black hole. I don't actually, it's just really cool. Isn't that weird? I mean, who would have thought? I don't know what to take from this. I do know one thing you shouldn't take from this, and it was summarized in, I believe it was a Daily Mail headline that says, "Watch out, black hole could devour our entire solar system and turn Earth to dust." Okay, that's maybe potentially possible. I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. If the black hole's out there, it's probably been there for a few days. I think we're probably okay. Meanwhile, in Japan, a number of different studies have shown that workplace harassment, abuse, and even assault is a significant problem. And it's a reminder that though we've done a little bit of work here in the US, especially when it comes to harassment of women on the job, it is still a massive problem, both here and abroad. I want to give you some numbers. 36.3% of women with mental illnesses said that they had suffered from sexual harassment, assault, bullying, and abuse of power at work by superiors, according to a survey in a white power on measures to prevent death from overwork. So obviously this is a very serious study. The consequences of not getting this thing right is a number of suicides, fairly common in Japan. And that number, I mean, whatever you thought that number would be, the fact that more than 1 out of 3 women have said that anything from harassment and abuse to all like assault, even rape, that is incredibly scary stuff. It's true for men as well, though at lower numbers. The survey found about 23.1% of male workers with mental health issues cited a change in their job role or workload as the main cause for their problems. 15.9% attributed the problem to assault, bullying, and abuse of power. So on both sides, there is a bullying and abuse of power to go around, but it is affecting women at more than twice the rate, which is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. Another study, this is a separate study, they were looking into freelancers in Japan and how they're treated. Now these are people who have less power in the workplace, they're considered expendable to some extent. It found that 61.6% of freelancers have experienced work-related power harassment. So that isn't necessarily specifically sexual, but it's not necessarily not sexual. And it turns out there was quite a bit of that as well. 36.6% said they'd faced sexual harassment. 214 in a study involving just about 1,200 people said they'd been forcibly asked to have sexual relationships. 66% were stalked. 53 people said they were raped. That is 53 out of just 1,200. Okay, that's not 60%, but that is an unacceptably high number. So this sort of abuse of power, sexual and non-sexual, just use of power, abuse, assault, stalking, rape, serious problem. Now, obviously this is something for Japan to deal with. A reminder here that we may not have these high of numbers, but we do have a serious problem as well. And I worry that over the past few years, people's sort of eye has gone off the prize. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, I am reminded that it is just one day after the 1-year anniversary of the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a murder for which there was no consequences whatsoever, but perhaps there could be. So I want you to take a look at an interview 60 Minutes had with Mohammed bin Salman, the man responsible for this murder. Take a look at what he says about it.
Did you order the murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
Absolutely not. This was a heinous crime. But I take full responsibility as a leader in Saudi Arabia, especially since it was committed by individuals working for the Saudi government.
What does that mean, that you take responsibility?
When a crime is committed against a Saudi citizen by officials working for the Saudi government, as a leader, I must take responsibility. This was a mistake, and I must take all actions to avoid such a thing in the future.
A mistake. That's one way to put it, a mistake. So he started off his response when she said, did you order it? He says, not reassuring. Not reassuring if I'm predisposed to believe that you ordered that this person be brutally murdered, cut into bits, carted off, and the body disposed of somewhere. But he gets past that and he gets around to saying that while he didn't order it, he is responsible. And so that might lead you to wonder, well, okay, if you're responsible, if you take responsibility, if you're worried about the fact that this could set a precedent where people working for other rulers might do the same thing, what form should your responsibility take? Well, conveniently this week, news broke of a form that it could come in. This is 2 Washington attorneys calling on the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda to push for an investigation into Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who you just saw, for the alleged kidnapping, torture, and assassination of Jamal Khashoggi 1 year after his disappearance. So that looks like it would be consequences. That looks like if you were to go along with that, that would be actually taking responsibility for it, because taking responsibility to the host of 60 Minutes, that's one thing. Taking legal responsibility and potentially facing some sort of consequences, that is a far better form of responsibility. I want to give you a little more information about this petition. It refers to the murder of Khashoggi, who worked for the Washington Post prior to his death on October 2nd last year, the torture of dissidents, persecution of human rights activists, multiple war crimes in Yemen, and other offenses as instances of the Crown Prince's crimes against humanity. So of course, considering the anniversary, I am tying it in with that particularly heinous murder. But this is a guy, this is a regime who's committed human rights abuses all over the place. Horrid murder of civilians, the deliberate targeting of civilians, allowing for starvation, chronic diseases to spread throughout the population of Yemen and other places. A little bit more information, the petition contends that the Crown Prince's assassination of Mr. Khashoggi threatens international peace and stability, and if left unpunished, the assassination will embolden Mohammed bin Salman to greater recklessness. And that is my concern. The idea that if there are not consequences, that he could be perhaps incentivized to do something else. That really just mirrors what he said. It was a great mistake, and the worry is that it will lead to other employees doing this sort of thing. So I have that worry, Mohammed bin Salman has that worry. Here is a potential way to square that circle. Go along with this investigation, go to the ICC, see to what extent you deserve actual consequences for the responsibility that you say is yours alone. That is my message to Mohammed bin Salman. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.